Joe, many thanks for your time this afternoon. I think let's start by talking about what the business actually is and really what inspired you to start it.
Okay. Well, good afternoon to you and to the viewers. AeroBuddies is a STEM education enrichment company. STEM stands for Science, Technology, Engineering, and Mathematics. So one of the things that actually inspired us to start AeroBuddies was two things. One, when we realized that South Africa was ranked quite low by the OECD in the science and maths performance of 15-year-olds. In fact, we came out 75th out of 76 countries. And as a result, I began to think about, the fact that what is it that, an ordinary person like me can contribute, to help ease that challenge. And at the same time, I was training for my private pilot's license at Grand Central Airport. So one of the things that happened is that I saw, a very young boy with his father, and he was doing pre-flight checks. Pre-flight checks are, like when you go to driving school, that initial walkabout that you do around the car, it's something similar to that, And he did the checks by himself, and the father was, inside the aeroplane. And, then there was a seed that was planted in my mind, And then upon further research, I discovered that in the US, there was a guy actually who was training kids from as little as 6-year-old to fly in real aeroplanes, So I began to teach my son simulation, and to my surprise, he caught quickly. And then, basically that's how the business started. There is a great need also in South Africa for STEM professionals. There is a shortage in industry of STEM professionals, and because of that, we then decided that, let's give it a go, let's give it a try, and it's been an amazing journey.
Joseph, this sounds like something that is not very broad, at least from my very naive understanding, because, well, not so many. There was a study that was done in Nigeria that showed that primary school teachers actually failed a 10-year-old test themselves when they were handed the same test. Who's to say that you need to tackle the STEM issue in the country, at least from the teachers' angle, because they have more interaction with the kids across the country as a whole? Wouldn't that be a broader-based approach to this problem?
Whilst you are correct, but we are positioning AeroBuddies as an education enrichment company. So we operate mainly, outside of school hours. The teachers of course, have a lot of time with the children during school hours. But children from 1 o'clock until 6 o'clock are mainly by themselves. And that's a lot of time if you compound it over, 12 months or a 10 months period, So we operate after school, an after school flying club. But we also go into schools and do what we call an in-class flying workshop, and we are beginning to engage with educators. So part of our strategy is to see how we can, involve the Department of Education, and through that, be able to engage with teachers. And perhaps in future, we are a startup company, so there's still many more years to come. Perhaps in future, to also empower teachers. What we also intend to do is to integrate flying. Flying is an application of maths and science. But what we intended to do is to integrate flying with school STEM subjects, in particular maths and science, to bridge the gap, from a practical point of view, And if teachers want to engage, if teachers are interested, we are always open to engage with teachers. We have a teacher at one of the primary schools where we've worked, an HOD for maths and science, who said this is actually quite amazing. And the feedback that he gave us, from his perspective, is that it's a tool that can enable them to open up the kids' minds, before they get to high school. By the time they get to high school and write matric, if the foundation was not laid properly, then it's a little bit too late.
I'm glad you bring up these possible partnerships with government stakeholders, but how important is it for education enrichment companies to be partnering with corporates, for example, SAA? I mean, are those conversations you're having with SAA, has SAA come on board and, you know, really just given the thumbs up to as to the potential of AeroBuddies? So
I haven't spoken to SAA. But AeroBuddies is incubated by the Innovation Hub, which is a science park and a subsidiary of the Gauteng government. And through them, we are in the commercialization stage. We are beginning to engage with various stakeholders, both within the aviation industry, but the aviation industry is small compared to the greater corporate world. So we want to engage as well with other corporates outside the aviation industry. In 2016, we won the AVI Award, which is sponsored by the ATNS, Air Traffic Navigation Services. So whilst, you know, over the last 24 months, it's been mostly about developing our programs, you know, writing the programs. And now we are at the stage where now through commercialization, we are beginning to engage with corporates.
Joseph, just a quick one. How much is it to get your pilot license?
Well, to get from 0 flying hours to a commercial pilot's license in South Africa, they say it's about R500,000, so it's a lot of money.
Right, and the reason why I ask that is because there's this idea in all our heads that it is quite expensive. If I have a child, my thinking would be it is quite expensive to enroll your child through flight school. And are you looking at having this app particularly bridge this gap or just change this particular narrative?
And yes, and can I just, before I answer the question, can I just mention that, what we do is just a tool to introduce kids to maths and science. Not all of them will go into aviation and become pilots and so forth, but you are correct. So one of the things that we plan to do is to engage with corporates to begin to find mechanisms and strategies to sponsor children. And I'm talking about non-aviation companies. If you want to study any other degree for that matter, you can get a bursary and go to Wits University or University of Stellenbosch. In South Africa, there isn't any aviation training bursaries except from airlines, which there isn't currently, as well as the Transport Education Training Authority. So there's very little room for kids that want to explore those careers, as you've just said.
Yeah, and then finally, I guess your thoughts on the fact that our President Cyril Ramaphosa would like to meet you. I think maybe just share with us. It was a story
you should
that
see the look on your face. You should.
that was shared to us by our editor, and really just should you have a meeting with him, the kind of conversation you'd like to have.
Okay, and so that happened through the Black Management Forum. I'm top 5 of the BMF Innovation and Invention Program. I'm not 100% sure what the reason is, but I think the key thing for us that we want is for an opportunity for schools to open up to AeroBuddies, particularly disadvantaged schools. 2 weeks ago, we went to Limpopo in a district called Sikukuni. It's a village. You should have seen the excitement because children and educators there are not exposed to this type of things, be it aviation inspired or any other type of STEM themed education programs. So the greatest need is to get access to the basic education system. Yeah.
Brilliant. Many thanks for your time this afternoon. We've been speaking there to Joseph Phalwane, who's the founder of an award-winning AeroBuddies.